need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk, now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, the commander, it's Andy Greenwald!
Happy Martin Luther King Day.
Yeah, man. I was waiting to see if you would acknowledge that. We're here on a Monday because there was just too much TV.
There was.
You know, and we couldn't record on Friday, and I didn't want to record on Tuesday.
And Brandon Tartikoff had a dream. And the dream would be 400 scripted series in his children's lifetime. Little white shows, little black shows living together.
That's right. That's
what we're here for.
Greenwald, great to see you, man. What a weekend of television. What a weekend of sport. I was thinking maybe we should start doing the last 10 minutes of this podcast are called Sports Center.
Give me something to look forward to.
And it's just us talking about Sean McDermott. But we have too much TV to talk about today. And so much so that unless you have any pressing personal announcements, we can skip the favorite part of the show for Bill Simmons and get right into some television breakdowns.
Is that officially his favorite part? I thought he liked it. By far,
yeah.
That's his favorite part?
He's always telling me, he's like, you guys... When you guys are just shooting from the hip in the first 10 minutes.
He tells you that, but he tells me a very different story.
No, he does. We have a new show, the best show, and a last episode of a show.
Okay.
What do you want to talk about first?
It wasn't the last episode of Industry, even though it felt like it.
No, it was not.
So, that's the best show.
Yes. We have A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. We have Industry. We have The Landman. The Landman season 2 finale. The series premiere of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And the second episode of the 4th season of Industry.
Is it Pick'em? I have a sense.
Yeah, come on. Let's go.
Do you think we should start with Thrones?
Yeah. Okay. So,
that's what got me out to LA, you know?
Game of Thrones.
Yeah. And then I flew back, and then I flew back, and then I flew back. But like in a big picture sense,
and then one day you just stayed.
We owe this show a lot.
This is the new series in the Game of Thrones universe. This one is showrun and created by Ira Parker, although in, I think, consultation with George R.R. Martin. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. This is a completely different kind of look for this franchise, I guess you could say. It's a contained story to some extent. These are based on novellas by Martin. There's 6 of them, I believe, in existence, though Martin says he has ideas for quite a few others. And it's TV.
There's 3 novellas.
Oh, okay.
But I think you, as a loving member of the artistic community, you take him at his word. In the same way that you were just like,
he did say that he's got ideas for like 12 more or something like that.
I've also heard, and I don't want to break news here, I'm not Jason or Mallory, but I believe he said he has plans for 2 additional novels in the main series of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm misremembering, but I do believe back in 2010 there was talk about that.
Well, we could talk about George and his ever-changing role in this world. But I was excited for you to see this show.
Yeah.
I had watched some screeners a little while ago. We won't be doing any spoilers of the future of this season, although, if you're a Game of Thrones fanatic, you probably know what this series is about. If you are just going into it blind, as I did going into it.
Did you?
Yeah. I think it's like a delightful reaffirmation of and revalidation of like what's cool about these stories. And I thought this first episode was awesome, but I can't wait to hear what you thought.
I thought it was great. I thought it was incredibly entertaining. I think we should shout out Ira Parker, as you did, who's the showrunner of this. Someone, I don't know anything about him. I think he worked on House of the Dragon. I don't know what he particularly brought, like what his pitch was, what the relationship was. I do know that this series was in active development for a while, right? And briefly, Stephen Conrad, who is a fairly culty but loved television creator.
Who has another show on HBO coming in a couple months. DTF
St. Louis. But he's responsible for Patriot, as well as there was the other show that I'm blanking on right now.
Ultra City Smiths.
But then there was another one. It doesn't matter.
Perpetual Grace Limited.
God, you're so good. How do you still have it?
I don't know. They're buried somewhere in there.
I'm really impressed. Anyway, I believe he was attached to this, and I think that's really interesting to think about. But the reason why I bring it up is because it just seems off of one episode, and again, one episode out of 6, I believe, that Ira Parker has the exact right sensibility to play to the strengths of the existing franchise as it is known on television, but play within those established borders and still have some irreverence, still have some wit, still be kind of meta-aware of what he's playing with and the expectations he's subverting while still honoring what everybody who's ever liked Game of Thrones has come to love about it. Perhaps best exemplified by the opening in which the theme music plays briefly.
The Game of Thrones theme music, yeah.
Before a quick cut to, I believe, what was your favorite scene in the episode?
Explosive diarrhea from
Yes.
our main character, Dunk. Yeah. So it's been interesting talking with Mallory and Joe about this on Talk the Thrones, just because it sounds like this is an incredibly faithful adaptation, except for a few flourishes here and there. And one of the flourishes was the pooping.
Oh, that's not in it.
I don't think so. And, you know, there's even like a George Martin quote about him being like, you know, I'm not.
Do it. Do the voice. Do the voice.
I don't have the voice.
I was excited.
I don't have the voice.
You looked like you reared back for a second.
He was just like, that's not in the book, you know? And so that is obviously.
Here go these Hollywood types trying to put their stamp on the material.
I think that his kind of concept of what an adaptation should be is make it as faithful as possible. I mean, he said that explicitly. I think that what Parker brings to this is like a sense of like wit,
It's
like
playful.
you said, and also feeling. Like this is the first Thrones show, I think, that you can get into like the main characters and be like, these seem like pretty good people.
Yeah,
so far.
And I
you know?
want them to succeed because their goals are relatively modest. It has been over a decade since we've been introduced to any character, I believe, in the Game of Thrones universe whose goal wasn't outright takeover of the Iron Throne / annexing Greenland.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that is always, it's always coming off the top rope. That's not how the series began. And in that way, it is a return to the roots. But in another way, it is a completely different way in because these are just, I don't think that, correct me if I'm wrong, I am slightly spoiled about the show only because I think that the little kid's name is kind of a giveaway, as well as his mysterious, you know, what were you doing in this town? Where are you from? Kind of thing.
Why'd you shave your head?
But well, maybe he had hair loss, like he was just leaning into it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to judge the young boy. People age differently then, you know.
It's true. They didn't have such a nutrient-rich diet as us.
They weren't being served Hims ads on their Instagram constantly. They didn't know they had options. I don't believe, and I hope this is the case. I mean, I'm sure there are people who know much better, know more than I do, could tell me I'm wrong, but I don't think that Sir Duncan is actually going to be revealed to be the prince who is promised.
No,
he's just a nice protagonist for a show.
Yeah.
And
my understanding is that he has a role to play in the history of Westeros, but not in a huge one.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the spirit of it, like, the way that you have to think about one, at this point, I think everyone understands that you think about the Westerosi books, that they are history books of a made-up place. Mm-hmm. So he's not really writing about, I mean, occasionally he will Howard Zinn it a little bit, but largely I believe George Martin subscribes to the great man of history theory in terms of who he writes about. All that is irrelevant. It is actually, I think, a harder challenge than people might assume from seeing how comfortable and just enjoyable the show is to downscale an entire piece of IP and make it something a little bit more approachable. I think that we should talk a little bit more about the specifics of this show, but I do think it presents, it's already clearly so successful. I think it presents an interesting counterpoint to some of the other larger franchises and when they've tried to do this, namely Marvel, DC, and Star Wars.
Well, I think that, you know, you talk about history. One of the things that any franchise show is going to have to establish or have to figure out going into it is what's our relationship to the main timeline? Mm-hmm. What's our relationship to the events that have already been depicted that might have brought people into this story in the first place? And, you know, probably the most ingenious workaround of that was Andor, where it's this 20-hour epic or 22-hour epic about a footnote in Star Wars history, according to the movies, you know, but it makes it seem like it's the most important thing that's ever happened, and perhaps it was in that world.
And for those characters who were fully realized people.
Yeah, and I think that what I liked about this was it started with people rather than a thing, rather than an event, rather than a turning point, rather than you don't know the secret story about like the guy who gave Jon Snow his first beer, but here it is. It's more about what were like, you know, what was like, give me a slice of life during this time that's 100 years before Game of Thrones starts.
Is that official? I didn't even look.
Yeah, I think it's like something like 100 years before Game of Thrones starts. And I actually find like reading about those kings and the transitions of power and the way different families take over. I'm like in the Wikipedia surface level stuff, I find it like relatively like,
Really?
Intriguing. Yeah.
I like reading Robert Caro books, but that's cool, dude.
Do you though?
No.
Yeah.
I just really wanted to stake out the cooler lane than you in that.
The cooler lane is reading Robert Caro.
Age gracefully. You know what I mean?
You read any other books recently?
Thank you for asking. I did have a nice way to set that up later, so let's save it.
But yeah, like I think that the relationship this show has to the Game of Thrones sort of umbrella or the big tree is to show that there are different ways of telling these stories. And, Martin has been pretty explicit over the last couple of weeks in his interviews about the state of his relationship to House of the Dragon.
Fascinating Hollywood Reporter cover story.
And
or Variety, I forget which one it was.
I gotta say, man, like after watching Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and I don't mean this in like a completely dismissive way because I do like House of the Dragon at times and some of the performances on it, but maybe George is right. And maybe he knows best, and maybe like he knows the story better than anyone. And if shoot what's basically on the page. Now, House of the Dragon's a really hard adaptation because it's like, it's essentially like shooting a couple pages of a pamphlet, right? Like it's from what I understand.
I again, we're the wrong people to have strong opinions about this, but we can have strong opinions, but about like knowledge of the material. That's my understanding of it as well. And so it always was going to be kind of a cursed adaptation because what it has is like a family tree and a series of events.
Sure.
And some writing, of course.
Yeah.
But,
well, it's
but
like
how do you turn that into a television show?
There are like these 2 or 3 historians who are telling the story, but at times are like, we can't be for sure what was said here or whatever, I think. In any case, I mean, like, we don't have to weigh in a lot on a writer that we haven't actually read his work, but...
I mean, we are 10 years into doing that, but yeah.
It just informed, all these interviews and knowing what I know about it informed, like, maybe a more, like, sort of traditional adaptation of this work is, like, what works.
It's incredibly complicated and incredibly difficult, but you can reduce it to a fairly simplistic observation, which is, cart before the horse. And in this metaphor, the cart is plot and the horses are characters. And House of the Dragon, I believe, exists primarily to serve a story that seemed cool, that got the world to a certain place, that had a lot of dragons, that I also think we can never overstate the reactive nature of the existence of that show. Because the first time they tried to do a spin-off, which from everything we understand was a little bit more experimental, a little bit more character-driven, or at least surprising, by all accounts, it was not successful. And so they were in a rush to get something on the air, and they went right at what people have always liked. Let me be clear. They went right at what had recently been world-dominating about the show, which was Dragon War.
Yeah.
And let's do that. This was a chance. They had more time to develop it. And again, we don't know the details of everything that's been talked about, but it's quite clear from the leaks that we have had over the last few years that the gentle fracking of the source material by HBO over the last few years has been relatively considerate, I would say, in the sense that we hear every so often about anywhere from 1 to 6 projects being in development.
Martin was like updating about like a bunch of the stuff, and it's like there's like a Aegon's Conquest that could be a Dune trilogy, or it could be another TV show.
The Sea Snake thing that could be a show or a cartoon. Like they do seem to be taking some lessons from the over dilution of Marvel and Star Wars by taking being a little slower with it, which I think is good. And if this is the result, by saying we don't need 2 houses of the dragon, we need 2 different shows at different times of the year, alternating with different vibes. That seems like a healthy. It seems like healthy stewardship.
Yes.
The other version, we're seeing it. I think there was talk this week, like Fallout is such a success for Amazon that they're going to do a spinoff or a reality show. The Boys, a show that
they're going to do a reality show for Fallout.
Yeah. I think the reality show is us watching the second episode and being like, okay, you were right. Like, who says it first? But or like with The Boys, a show that I still really like. I'm looking forward to the last season. The spinoff, Gen V, I was like, I'm good. This is.
Will you be watching Vought though? Like the one that's one that's got.
I mean, it's being run by a college friend of mine, and it stars Aya Cash, so I will be giving it its due diligence.
Good.
Also, I am interested in the Vought version of the era that Robert Caro wrote about. as well as a show that I'm pitching as a companion piece, Generation E.
Isn't the Aya Cash character a little bit more Effingers?
That's what I'm saying. Generation E would be the Effingers at the same time if the Vought Corporation had invested in the Effinger Motor Company.
If you're new to the watch, Andy finished a book called The Effingers.
First of all, it's just Effingers.
Okay, sorry.
I'm just saying. But yes, if you're new to the watch today, Martin Luther King Day 2026.
You so don't want to be potting today. You keep bringing up Martin Luther King Day.
Okay, January 19th.
Yeah.
A day of... It's like... Okay, state of Arizona.
Sean McDermott, the first day of Sean McDermott's new life.
Yeah, I have a lot of Sean McDermott takes. We'll save them at the end of the show. Back to Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Peter Claffey, who I believe is a former rugby player.
And was in Bad Sisters. I was alerted to that.
Is an incredibly charming and funny protagonist. Is a great energy on the show. Really well cast. The young bald egg, Dexter Sol Ansel, seems like a good young actor.
He is a good young actor.
The direction... Owen Harris, and Sarah Dina Smith did the back half. She's a director that we like a lot in her work. And then what they did is the thing that I think we often think of as like the cheat code for British series, which is you just spam the BAFTA button, you spam the National Theatre button, and you just get actors who are all God tier. And the moment I knew, there were two moments in particular casting wise where I was like, we're in good hands. One is when our guy Tom Von Lawler shows up. That's our dude from Say Nothing, I believe.
Yes.
And you remember him best from his role as one of Thanos' Death Eaters or whatever.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
You didn't remember that?
No.
That's how you first encountered the work of Carrie Coon as well, and when she was Proxima Midnight. Does Tracy not know that that's the first time you'd seen his wife act? Well, I guess he's finding out now, assuming he listens to pods on federal holidays. The other actor that I love...
Federal. I know you have a lot of deference
to the federal authority. Listen, I was told, just comply. Daniel Ings, who is the breakout star of the Guy Ritchie series, The Gentleman.
Have you watched that show?
Yeah, we talked about it on the podcast.
Okay,
good.
Yeah.
He's great in it. And he is a Baratheon.
Lionel Baratheon, the Laughing Storm. Yeah.
And obviously, I think people who are not new to the watch understood that the moment I fell in love with the show was when there's a tense moment between Sir Dunk and Sir Lionel. And it does not end with a red wedding. It ends with a homoerotic dance party.
Yeah.
Okay.
I kind of alluded to this on Thursday's show, but I was curious your thoughts on the depth versus width aspect of this series. To take basically one setting, which is a giant field in this town of Ashford, where they're going to have this tournament. There's going to be this, a Knights tournament, and Duncan is signing up for this tournament at great personal risk, not only for injury, but if he loses, he has to give up his horses, whatever money he has, which is very little anyway. But still,
I do have a question. It's never been a me problem, but I do believe the upkeep and feeding of horses can be quite cost prohibitive.
I mean, I don't know what the inflation rate is in Westeros at that moment.
These horses look very, very healthy and well fed.
But the Targaryen royal family might have instituted a Build Back Better situation where prices are coming down.
Oh, do you think that they turned the economy around? They made groceries lower. Fantastic.
No, but I was just going to ask you whether you enjoyed exploring the different corners of a single setting rather than world hopping the way Game of Thrones did.
I was thrilled by it, but I also didn't. I've only watched one, but it has been alluded to me that this is the setting.
This is the
for
show.
This series. I think that's great. I think that if the show successfully pulls off what it has suggested that it's going to be able to do through this one episode, it will have done something that a lot of other big IP scale, but modest content has not been able to do. You brought up Andor, which I think is one of the greatest accomplishments of our lifetimes of television. It is also completely not repeatable because it was both pitched at a different level of intellectual rigor and political advocacy and awareness, and everything is just at a different level than your normal Star Wars show. The price point was not that different.
No, I mean, I imagine this was cheaper than Andor.
That's my point. This is not only cheaper than Andor, this is clearly cheaper than House of the Dragon, but intentionally so. And in a way that harkens back to what I was saying last week about like, have the plan ahead of time so that your budget so that the budget that you get is aligned with the goals that you have going in creatively. And I think that clearly this was built to be that. And so you set the whole thing in a field, great. I don't know what the model for that would be in the other realms of IP, but I still think it might be possible. And you feel like Star Wars is the one that keeps stepping on the rake with that, in the sense that they're like, oh, well, we could do a show about a bounty hunter kicking around like Tatooine and maybe going into Mos Eisley for a couple blue milks now and again.
Yeah.
And then within 5 episodes, there's digital Luke Skywalker striding across the screen.
Yes.
Like they can't help themselves in reaching for the shiniest, most expensive ingredients in the shop.
I'm happy to talk about Star Wars if you want to, because obviously with Kathy Kennedy leaving Lucasfilm, there was a lot of news about that over the last week. There were several updates about some of the new projects and what they're going to be doing. Dave Filoni is taking over the creative side of Lucasfilm.
He's co-president with a woman who's been the head of business affairs, whose name I will Google to get correct as you continue your thought.
You mentioned the idea of like Luke Skywalker has to show up in The Mandalorian at a certain point because we need to make this pretty traditional TV show of like an adventure of the week kind of situation into a bigger deal than it already is. That was always really amusing to me because, you know, they struck gold with a Boba Fett looking guy and a little Yoda. You know, like they could have spun that out for a little while longer before they got to the Force.
Yep. But
I wonder whether or not some of that was the circumstances of Star Wars, of Filoni's obvious ascendance within the company, up to being the creative director and the sort of president of or whatever his title is of Lucasfilm, and whether or not that had anything to do with what the storytelling choices were on Mandalorian specifically. Now that's Favreau as well, you know what I mean, and he maybe has big ambitions anyway for that story, but I don't know. I mean, like, there's another world where Kathy Kennedy stays in charge of Lucasfilm and has like an ironclad, like, I'm going to be here for 10 years because the movies have been successful. And Mandalorian maybe stays in its lane a little bit more. I'm not sure.
I am not optimistic about the next few years of Lucasfilm, I would say.
Well, the next few years are kind of spoken for.
Yes. But I think there's a couple things to be said here. One, like, for as justified as much of the criticism that has come, Kathy, a lot of the criticism is justified. I think when you just look at how that sequel trilogy turned out and the complete absence of the multiplexes of anything for a long time, like this is not great stewardship, I would say. You could flip it and you could also say, who else but Kathy Kennedy with her the security she had in that position due to her reputation and relationships in the industry could have gotten it as far as it did in terms of getting that honestly fairly cursed trilogy across the finish line, which was cooked from the beginning when Disney was like, in order to justify this acquisition, we need a sequel up and running within 18 months. Like, we need to do this.
Yeah.
It was the opposite of what I was just sort of, describing as a sort of like gentle, slow food, bespoke cooking of Game of Thrones sequels, which is also probably highly inaccurate. But it was the opposite of that. It was like, we have a deadline and we have a date and we have shareholders to report to. Let's get these things moving.
Right.
Once you start, when you start playing catch up from the beginning, I don't think you can ever actually get in front of things.
I think it was also just like a decision that they made that even though they were going to push the ball forward with a new trilogy, it was going to essentially be a remake of the first film. With Force Awakens, which is in retrospect a pretty decent movie, but beat for beat is essentially A New Hope. I think it was always going to be, you create this expectation among fans that it's going to be fan service. If A Force Awakens had been some brave new step forward and about different kinds of characters within that world, I think maybe we're talking about something else. It also may not have been that successful.
It's also the idea, it's really interesting to see these are relatively unique jobs and relatively new jobs, almost in the same way that we talk about showrunners sort of becoming a more public figure and a more important, recognized
franchise thing. Franchise GMs.
Yeah. you
James Gunn, Kevin Feige,
Mike Lombardi. Like, there's a list of people, who have the vision above and below.
Now Brandon Bean.
Yeah, exactly.
waiting for that call from Filoni.
Maybe. When you hire Kathy Kennedy, what you're saying is you want someone with experience producing films in that job. And she was quite candid on the way out the door in a way that only she can with the stature that she has already accrued before this. What she talked about, how Solo was a mistake in her eyes, she owned it in a way. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
She also was like the Mangold script with Bo Willimon for like this Knights of the Republic thing, I think, is awesome, but is on hold.
Yes, well, it's also probably on hold because James Mangold, I don't know if it's related or unrelated, was like, I'm going to take my talents to Paramount.
Well, he's directing a Timothy Chalamet movie at Paramount.
But he also signed an overall deal at Paramount.
Yeah,
to make
but
I know these guys can jump around. No one is untradeable. That's going to come up in our sports
I just think it's
thing.
like lots of people seem to sign overalls and then immediately do something else
Well,
with.
no, people sign, yes, fair, but usually not within they make something for TV or there's something that predated the deal. It's anything is still possible.
Yes.
We don't know actually what these deals say for him, but I do think it's interesting that he wasn't like, new blood in the building.
Also, I'm sure that they're holding the wheel pretty tight over at Disney. I'm sure they knew for a long time, as it's been reported, that Kathy Kennedy was going to be leaving and Dave Filoni was going to be taking over. And so that the development process at Disney has probably been slowed down to something of a crawl.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah. So why not? If you're James Mangold and it's like life's pretty short, like
I agree.
Timothy Chalamet wants to make a motorcycle heist movie.
I agree.
And I'll do it. Yeah.
And as she says in these interviews, like to do one of these, it's at least 3 years of your life or in your career, if not more. And she admitted to something. I don't remember if it had been reported before, but like she and her team met with everybody. And a lot of this was rumored. A lot of things have been confirmed by the people like offhand or off the record. But she straight up said like, yeah, we met with Vince Gilligan about doing a Star Wars TV show. We have had multiple meetings with David Fincher about making a movie here. She can have those meetings. I think the difference is when you put Filoni in the top chair, so what are you getting there? It is more the James Gunn model in the sense of this is a guy with a sensibility who has likes and dislikes and will be, for better or for worse, the creative engine.
And has like a very clear idea about what he thinks Star Wars is about and a very clear idea about like what the timeline is and what the values of the franchise are.
Yes. And I think that his opinions are, I don't think this is controversial to say, fairly conservative. I don't mean politically. I just mean like there is he's a strict constitutionalist.
He's a Lucas originalist. Yeah.
Yes, he is. And so I think that there's value in the value that Kathy clearly recognized. And like, here's a guy who has an engine of stuff and stories and perspectives, and that can help fill our dance card when part of the mandate of juggling this company is, kickstart the big movie furnace, but also keep the TV fires going.
I think she did. I have no idea if it's being perceived this way, but if I were Dave Filoni, I would be like,
you'd have a different hat.
That was a tough interview
that she did.
Yeah, I thought the last part of that interview where she's like, Scott Burns and Steven Soderbergh did a great job with this Kylo Ren script. Donald Glover has turned in a Lando script. The James Mangold script is mold breaking. Taika Waititi's script is hilarious. Here's 5 movies or whatever. That are sitting here ready to rock. Yep. Ready to go in terms of their script. And it's like, have fun with Ahsoka.
Yes, that is, you're correctly reading
So
this.
if I were Dave Filoni, I'd be like, you could have gone out and been like, here are the things that Dave is developing. Here are the things that matter to him. And all the other stuff I'll let him comment on.
But instead it's just like, well, we've got this fun live-action cartoon movie with a wrestling Boba Fett coming out.
Even her being like, I talked to Fincher and Vince Gilligan is kind of like, if I had my way.
But also in that interview, she's like, well, Dave got some real reps directing human beings on Ahsoka season 1. She says that.
Yeah.
Like, I would say that I just tea leaves. This is really more of the town conversation, and I'm sure
the town, capital T, capital T.
Yes, and actually lowercase. But I mean, like Matt Bellany's podcast. I'm very curious to hear how he covers the story in the weeks and months going forward. I think one of the major takeaways by the way this news broke is that Dave Filoni, for all of his abilities and resources and connections to this universe, may not have the what was it called? The Ministry. What did Tony call the Ministry of Propaganda in Andor season 2? He may not have that.
Yeah,
because this did not cater to.
Might not matter because he has the fans.
Does he still have the fans?
I think he has the base. I think he has the base.
You think he's captured the base?
I do. I think that there is I think there is probably Star Wars Celebration, watching long video breakdowns of like historical moments in Star Wars lore, cares about the timeline, cares about the like movements of like what's happening on the Outer Rim at any given moment. And I think he speaks for them.
Could we name them? Are they like MAGA? Like make Ahsoka great again? Has that been used? Because I think they are like, you could fire them up and you could point them in a direction and they would do what you want.
Yeah.
Jokes aside, I think this is a political job in addition to a creative and producerial job. And I think that this was a rocky rollout, especially with the timing of her leaving, a couple months before Mandalorian and Grogu comes out, which I think you and I have big floating question marks about.
Yeah.
It doesn't look awesome. It doesn't necessarily look like something we want.
I think that whatever the Book of Boba Fett turning into a shadow third Mandalorian season, going into like kind of an adjacent Ahsoka story, I think that's when I was kind of like, this is not really like a show I'm really that super interested in anymore.
Yeah.
I'll go see the movie. Yeah. But I'll be very interested after the year that we just got through of the kinds of blockbusters that we saw, and with the Odyssey coming, what it feels like to watch like a volume movie.
Yes, and I think that the other story coming out of this week that we should comment on, like the shadow story behind the announcement of the change at the top of Lucasfilm, was the subhead story that Dave Filoni hated Andor.
No,
which is not on the record.
He has said on the record,
yes,
what a huge admirer he is.
Yes.
Of it. Yes.
My point is, this is why the Ministry of Propaganda needs to step up here, because the fact that was such a heavily pushed story, and that is a rumor that I heard before any of this happened. Like that was
on Twitter or like
people
in the
talking.
Ether. Yeah, right.
That's the story.
A guy comes up to you at Canyon Coffee and says, "Sir," with tears in his eyes.
I can't afford Canyon Coffee on a podcast salary. What are you talking about?
Look at all the beverages you've acquired.
You got this for me free. So thank you, Daniel Eck, or his successor.
Yeah.
The fact that is a narrative that continues to exist, when in fact the best version of forget partisanship for once, Chris. For once. Let me do my CBS Evening News wrap up here.
Okay, Tony.
The best version of this would be him saying, what an honor to steer this great galactic star cruiser that has room for all of these shows, and we continue to generate stories in all areas and listen to the best version of every story idea. That would be a successful pivot for the new era of Star Wars that doesn't feel like retreat.
Do you think that is and should be the format, the philosophy of any of these franchise GMs? That there's tons of different stories and different ways to tell those stories within this great storytelling
honestly
like terrain, or should it be the sort of, what would it be, like phase 3 era Feige, who's like everything is a piece of something else. It's important that there's a house style, that there's consistency in the writing, that there's a consistency in the tone. When Marvel kind of adopted, everybody talked like Tony Stark in some ways. Everything was kind of glib, even if like Steve was tight and Thor was from like Asgard, but everybody was like, I have jokes.
No one got funnier than Thor.
Yeah.
Hemsworth is mad apparently.
But that you could take Taika Waititi and you could take Ryan Coogler and you could take
James Gunn,
the Russos and James Gunn, and have it all kind of click together.
And Chloe Zhao. Don't leave Eternals out of this.
How could I?
The funniest of all the movies.
Have you rocked Hamnet yet?
I'm on the record with my feelings about Hamnet.
That you will not be watching it.
That I am the...
If Hamnet wins Best Picture, will you watch it the next day?
I mean, I haven't seen The King's Speech. You know what I mean? I don't know, since when did that become the standard?
You have seen Green Book a couple of times, though.
Well, that's my go-to. That's my cheer-me-up movie.
Every MLK
Especially every MLK day, yes.
Do you see what I'm saying? Or should it be... Because I don't know that you would say Game of Thrones has a GM that has a very vocal, creative... originator, like in Martin, and he can have friendly or adversarial relationships with Benioff and Weiss, or Ryan Condal, or Ira Parker, And then it's the HBO machine that kind of makes everything what it is.
Yeah, I think there's no one right answer because for brief periods, different versions of each of these models has worked. I think the one thing to consider when we talk about these, and we have these conversations constantly, Star Wars and Game of Thrones exist on the history as a timeline model, where there are no alternate universes. These are all nodes on a timeline that happened and interacted with each other, and you can't really, as much as you may want to, you cannot retcon things specifically.
Sure.
Marvel and DC exist in the multiverse of madness, where anything can happen at any time, and you can just reboot. And Star Trek, for what it's worth, not that we even engaged with the new Star Trek show starring Paul Giamatti and Holly Hunter, which premiered last week, so look how far we done fell. That's also on we can just reboot and alternate versions of these people.
The funny thing is that if Paul Giamatti and Holly Hunter were in a Taylor Sheridan show, I would be like, I'm here. Yeah. I'm reporting for duty.
You're like, finally. Come home, Holly. Come home, Paul. So I think that either model can work. I think the big test for the one creative voice model in terms of DC will be Lanterns, which very clearly was designed to be something slightly different.
And then Gunn
took over, and we'll see. I'm not saying he meddled because I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think that's a plausible timeline that he meddled. But can you be both?
I think also the big test of Gunn's situation is going to be the many Batmen.
It's doing the 50.
Many Batman.
Doing the voice. Do the voice.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
That'll be the part where it's just like, it'll be a test of the audience as well. I mean, I don't think the Matt Reeves Batman and the Bold and the Brave, is that what it is?
The Bold and the Beautiful is the soap opera. The Brave and the Bold.
The Brave and the Bold is the Gunn-developed Batman story.
Yes, which they still haven't pulled the trigger on.
Right. I think that would be a big test of whether people enjoy like a sort of in their face multiverse. Not even a multiverse, because that is the thing. I would say that Marvel kind of cheat coded their way into like, this is how we do this, is by having we can still roll Patrick Stewart on out there if we want to, but I would say that the over reliance on multiversal storytelling by Marvel is part of the reason why I think people got a little bit fatigued with it. Because nothing matters if you can just reset it.
Extremely fatigued with it, and now they have been forced to go all in on what will undoubtedly be the most expensive 2-film series ever made to basically make as much money as possible and wring out the towel on this one, and then set up a hard reboot that people might be ready and interested in watching. I think the thing that's relevant about Star Wars is there's no there anymore. Like, I understood the obsession with the Skywalker story because that felt like the North Pole of anyone's interest in this. And if it was just there to play with, like if CGI Mark Hamill was on the table for any of these stories in the historical timeline, why not hit it to get that little dopamine in the series to make it feel important? Then when they went away from it, tonally and developmentally, it was hard to understand the connection because, something like The Acolyte, which I think was put together with the best of intentions and a lot of creativity and good spirit, felt neither here nor there because it felt tethered to a version of Jediism that is very Filoni-esque in terms of its seriousness and everything. But it didn't have any. It tried to bring a different point of view to the same energy, which I think is a challenge. Andor was completely different and worthwhile. But what is the main timeline? What is the Avengers movie of the Star Wars thing? And I guess it is the Simon Kinberg trilogy that he has been working on, which I would imagine is episode 10, 11, and 12.
Well, and Starfighter is set after the events of the most recent trilogy.
So that's where they're going to be doing their developmental work. But it is hard when, especially, they've essentially, since Disney took over, they have maximized a lot of it, but they've also frittered away another decade, which could have been spent sowing the seeds of something new. Yeah. I know that you don't pay a lot of attention to theme park or comic book news because you're too busy reading the histories of Westeros.
Andy, I have this saved. The StarWars.com announcement about Galaxy's Edge.
Do you want to talk about this?
So
this is so wild.
If people aren't familiar, Jason Gallagher and I actually did a long podcast about this while you were making Briar Patch. I think when Galaxy's Edge first came out.
Did you go?
No.
Excuse me.
Why would I go to Galaxy's Edge?
I just thought you were ready to share that you were a Disney adult, but I guess not.
No, and it is a park in Disney World where there is some narrative. You're on like a planet called Batu.
Don't look at me like I know.
Now,
ask Kaya. It's her generation stuff.
there was also like a hotel there that was like $1,500 a night or something. There was like some sort of like you're on a starship in this hotel. I don't know if that still is there or if they had to shutter that because of this economy, but they have now had to go back to the drawing board, not the drawing board, but they've had to adjust the timeline of Batu so that they can have Darth Vader and Princess Leia and Han Solo walking around.
Yes.
Because people are like, come on, dog.
Yeah, because like, but Rey gets to say, by the way.
Right.
But all the other new, because I think it is like an immersive, you're in a, someone could tap you on the shoulder and be like, do you want to do the Kessel Run or whatever? And you could be like, let me finish my blue milk first. Like it's pretty your vibe. But let's just make it clear. But yes, I guess that they wanted to, maybe, I don't know if attendance was dwindling or interest, engagement. So now Darth Vader walks through it. But the funniest part to me is they are so yoked to the dorkiest parts of our culture that they had to commission a Marvel Comics miniseries explaining why Luke Skywalker and company are now in this invented world.
Yeah.
Because you're going to show up with a fucking $30 funnel cake and 2 screaming 8-year-olds and you're going to be like, I don't think Greedo survived to be around now. I think, excuse me.
Should we do a field trip to Galaxy's Edge? Would you come with us?
Yeah, sure.
What holiday would you like me to do that on?
Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
As Lottie Effinger would have wanted. Oh, God.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, it's... I just feel like when... I'll make it personal. When I was 5 or 6 years old and I went to Walt Disney World in Florida and Captain Hook was walking around near Chippendale, I wasn't like, wait a fucking second.
Yeah.
Explain this.
Yeah.
Walt, I got it. Maybe we're a little too far down the rabbit hole.
All of this is to say, just to take it briefly back to Thrones, is that I actually weirdly do think Thrones supports this.
Yes.
Because I think that while there are people who are probably like Thrones originalists and really are like, we need to get back to the basics here, and this is about this, and this. There seems to be a little bit more of a healthy adversarial relationship between the fans and the author, especially because the author has not finished these books. And I think that this show shows a great way forward for the franchise itself. I at the end of season 2 of House of the Dragon, I was like, until they figure out like what happens the day after Game of Thrones ends, I don't know that this is going to work to keep doing things that people can easily spoil for themselves, to keep doing things that ultimately are going to be like living in the shadow of this, one of the great series of, I mean, aside from the last bit of it, like one of the great series we've ever had. And now I'm like, oh, I guess that you could do all sorts of things with this story.
I think the one aspect of fandom, and I mean this respectfully, that is challenging for Hollywood to reckon with or feed is a deep desire that fans of various worlds or franchises have to just kind of be in that world. That's why you have the Galaxy's Edge thing, sort of the immersive fan experience. That's why it's not just that there's a robust fan fiction community, it's that a lot of best-selling hardcover books emerge from fan fiction.
Yeah.
And it's something that is, I understand why it's challenging because you can't, as much as I would like, a genial kind of freeform hangout show about almost anything, TV demands plot. It's a different medium. But I think that the Game of Thrones world, as awful and violent as it is, it's the same thing. Like there are these romantasy series that I haven't read, but like the Fourth Wing series.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's just I'm going to go on a limb. It's not just the dragon fighting that people like. These are enormous books with entire societies and romance and things built into them.
Yeah.
That's as much fandom as the destruction of Sokovia. You know what I mean? And I think that you got to get
That's my federal holiday. That's what we're observing.
You haven't forgotten. You haven't forgotten.
We're actually taking Thursday off because that's the anniversary of Sokovia.
The Sokovia Accords are more important to you than I believe.
Do you think that we would have been hitting Sokovia with tariffs by now?
I think the Sokovia Accords have proven to be
Had Ultron not dropped it on the ground?
Sokovia Accords have proven to be stronger than the NATO alliance. I think that's canon now.
Anything else you want to say about Night of the Seven Kingdoms?
We've said so much not about Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I really enjoyed it, and I think the ultimate thing that we only mentioned in passing is the average episode length is like 35 minutes.
And are you like,
oh, God, I love it. I love it. I'm thrilled by that.
Let's talk about industry.
Okay. You're saving Landman. Okay.
Yeah, we can save Landman. Industry, season 4, episode 2, The Commander and the Grey Lady, which is essentially Mickey Down and Conrad K doing A Christmas Carol. This series, for what it's worth, a big suckers for Christmas. There's been a few Christmas episodes.
Chris, you've been with me in the UK these last 2 Novembers. There is nothing bigger in England than Christmas.
Than Crimbo?
They fucking love it. They're obsessed.
And they are not beating the Goodfellas allegations with the soundtrack of this one and the, there's just the overall vibe. I saw some people online talking about, we're seeing like GOAT level television right now. And I don't know whether it's a testament to the fact that I just expect this from the show now. Like I expect television at this level. But I watched this episode twice, actually. Like I watched it once just straight through and I was like...
How much time did you take between the viewings?
I just immediately ran it back. No, I took the second half of the Bears game between the viewings.
Okay.
And because I just wanted to see how it felt knowing where it was going to end.
Knowing the scaffolding and the shape. Yeah, sure.
And it's just an extraordinary piece of work, man. Like... we just spent a long time talking about Thrones. If I had told you that this is where like Kit Harington was going to be, I mean, would you ever have believed me?
Now, one thing we didn't mention in the George R. R. Martin interview, he alludes to the idea that the Jon Snow sequel series didn't go forward because Kit Harington basically wanted to do what he did last night on Industry.
Yes. Because
Jon Snow.
They made me fat! Yep. So in this episode, Henry Muck, we find him, we saw him at the end of the first episode crushing up pills and playing a harpsichord. Mm-hmm. And that shot takes place pretty much at the end of the first act of the second episode.
The timing of these episodes is intricate.
Yes.
There's moments that that sync up with 401.
Yes.
And then there's a deeper story, then there's moments that are completely different events. That's why one might want to do a second viewing.
Yeah, and I was curious about Harper and Whitney and that stuff, and like
this would be their second night.
Yes. So and in any case, in this episode, Harry Muck is losing his battle with depression at precisely the moment that his father lost his in his life, which is the 40th birthday. And on the night of Henry's 40th birthday, he's visited by a series of characters, some of which are real, like Whitney Halberstrom and his uncle Alexander and an old priest and a mysterious guest at this huge, lavish, Dangerous Liaisons, Peter Greenway party that he's having for his 40th birthday. A guy named the Commander shows up right when he is really going off the deep end.
I believe he's dropped acid?
I think he's dropped acid. And he comes into this banquet where all of his friends and his wife and his colleagues are there and members of the
woman
Labor
who
government.
Defeated him in a by-election.
And he's just pissed out of his mind. And this guy shows up and takes him out on a night on the small town that he basically owns. And we just get, a dark night of the soul with Henry Muck for the most part. And then the sort of second half of this episode is Yasmin's relationship to what's happening to Henry, what she wants to do with her life, what she wants to do with her marriage, and what she sees for her marriage. Before we get into the details of it and sort of some of the different moments, why don't you tell me what you thought of this episode?
Well, I want to just, before I forget, because I might forget otherwise, what you were saying about like people showering this episode with hosannas specifically for something I'm going to shower it with hosannas for, the audacity and maximalism of it, but also specifically some of the dialogue. I think the structure bears repeated investigation and also praise, because with a relative economy, I mean, it's a 60-minute episode, but a relative economy of screen time, to send Yasmin on a journey that earns its counterweight place with the Henry journey so that they can end in a together is really hard to do. That is like next level scripting and plotting and structure, particularly when you add in the challenges of the slightly skewed overlapping timeline and the fact that they are essentially rebooting the show, as we mentioned last week, with new characters and new stakes. So that alone is really remarkable. The thing that I wanted to say about the episode is this is maybe it's a crutch, but I do find that it bears repeating from time to time, which is the observation that storylines or characters' arcs in TV shows often really do echo the experience or the publicized, known, public-facing experience of the people making the show. And the example one always uses, or I always use, is like, oh, well, that's what the money is for. That was the David Chase-Matthew Weiner relationship, and he's talked about that. Last week, there was a moment when I started going down that old, I'm still writing a column for Grantland brain, and seeing Harper being perhaps over her skis in terms of power and authority behind a big fancy desk in a big Baroque building, still being looked down upon by old white people. Yeah. I'm like, oh, Mickey and Conrad are asserting their ownership of the show to a degree that is they have not done before, even though they have been the showrunners and obviously the co-creators. But now that they are completely the authorial voice on the script and behind the camera, is there something going on there? And then I realized that what Harper is doing, though, constantly is shorting things and underestimating things and profiting from that. And that is the opposite of what these guys do. They are fucking whales in Macau when it comes to the gambles they are willing to take with their prize, which is having a show on HBO.
Yes.
I think this episode was so maximalist, so extra, so unhinged that it was breathtaking to watch. And there were moments when, and I sent you the Philippe Petit skyscraper walk when I was watching the episode before you did, because there were moments when I was like, I think they're tipping. I think they are tipping too far on the wrong side. And then, like true acrobats, they right themselves.
Yes.
The difference between the ice cold show that Industry was at the beginning and that it often is with the contoured lines of the city or the version of the city that they recreate in Cardiff, with the hot-blooded Tom Jones diner, it wasn't a diner scene. Tom Jones doesn't live here anymore. The Tom Jones dinner scene Baroque aesthetic of the season finale of season 3 that was recreated here that is a wild spin. And there were also moments when I was like, I think they're more interested in this version of the show that is the Henry version of the show. And when Henry returns to the city, as I imagine he inevitably will now, I wonder if they will be able to marry the hot and cold sides of the show, like a McDLT.
It's the second episode of this season, and obviously we had one episode that was largely about Max Minghella and Cal Penn's characters. Harper's part of it, obviously, but we get little glimpses into what they're doing. But I felt like that first episode was about Tender, and the second episode was about Henry. So now we're about to start the third episode of this season, and the players have not gotten to the same gym yet.
No, but they're going to in the third episode, when we're about to talk about the 10th episode of the second season of a show on Paramount Plus that is just starting the show as it sets up the third season. So I think they're doing things fairly economically.
You mentioned the season 3 finale, which in some ways was a series finale for a certain version of the show.
Version, yeah.
And I love how there may not be narrative connected tissue, although if you pay attention, there is. But in terms of like style, aesthetic, visual sort of bravery, episodes will then give permission to future episodes. So shooting what they shot at Henry's place in the previous in season 2, in season 3, kind of gives them a lay of the land to do
how to shoot and light
so
those
much
rooms
more stuff in this. And they're using anamorphic lenses. obviously indulging in the gothic aspects of the surroundings, so much so that they are bringing in ghosts and bringing in flashbacks,
which are not things we have really seen in the language of the show before.
No, and I think I'm itching to get to the last scene, the very last scene. There's this. Also playing around with and then also lampooning the mythology of the great English man and like the almost like Arthurian kind of like you and the land are one, and having Alexander, Henry's uncle, in the window saying like spring has returned. Spring has returned. Like the idea that like this family is now kind of like come out of the darkness and the wilderness of this guy's depression. But that final scene, and there's, look, like it's easy to just be like, it's like The Graduate, there's some ambiguity to like how they feel. But I thought those two actors were so remarkable in that drive, not the humping against the car, although they did a great job doing that.
I thought they were great.
But his kind of like, I'm laughing, I'm crying, I'm laughing, I'm crying, or is it just the wind blowing in my face? And Marisa Bella's reaction to Henry being like, we should try for a child, and his blood on her lips is like, come on, like what are we doing here?
No, they touch God on that.
I mean, and I know that's what they're trying to do with this show.
But you don't get that moment without a lot of hard work. One of the talking about the structure, like the scene, everything that happens with Yasmin and her aunt, played by Claire Forlani.
Yeah.
Where the aunt's parting invective is, your father told me he was going to make sure that the pregnancy was aborted if it had been a boy, and here you are. And a lot about what it means to be a woman, and what it means to be a woman, to support, love, submit to, control, whatever, men in this world. And then for him to say, I'm better now, I'm going to give you something else to take care of.
Sure.
It's all there. But what's also there is the casting, and the, maybe this is an economic term that I could start to understand, is the opportunity or the opportunity cost. Because maybe all actors, all ambitious or hungry actors who have been locked in chainmail or franchise armor for years need to go to Ibiza with Mickey and Conrad, maybe literally or just metaphorically.
Sure.
Kit Harington is so he's dying of thirst for this role. Like, he is embodying it with his entire self.
Well, it's so funny.
The opening scene where he is embarrassed and smiling is one of the great hold camera acting performances of recent television.
Yeah.
And he brings that level of commitment and intensity to every scene, which is required considering the cocktail of drugs and suicidal ideation that he is existing under.
And the fact that he was like, Jon Snow drove me to ruin, like playing that part, but playing Henry Muck is like my dream role. Like,
but it allows him to say,
say,
I don't think I have a second act.
Yeah.
And Whitney says, maybe there aren't second acts in American lives, but the idea of being chained to something successful, in this case, you're born a lord, you are born rich, people are touring your home as if you contributed something to this world, but you are as disused and on display as a harpsichord. It's a remarkable act, and I'm very curious how this plays in the UK too, because I think we are just enough removed from being immersed in that kind of like landed gentry society to have just, I'm empathetic about the new character on my television show.
Yeah.
Whereas if the American version of industry, which could never exist, but a new character that we are building empathy, equity with, the first thing we see is that he's standing for election, wearing a MAGA hat. Like, I feel like that would maybe
turn off.
Now, I understand MAGA is a reform party. I get it. And personally, I vote Binface every time. Well,
I just think that they're doing their best to save Ahsoka from.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. I find it interesting, and that's another. It's a wild risk to be like, we are, because there's a version of entertainment about this level of society or this world, whether it was the world of Wall Street, or the street, or the upper class of England that is satirical, that is taking the piss, that is the gentleman, that is it's all a joke and we're all the victims of the joke. One of the reasons why industry stays ahead of the curve, I think, is because for all of the bluster and all of the massive amounts of cocaine, I think Mickey and Conrad are softies in terms of their interest in the emotional lives of these people. And it's quite a gamble making us care to the degree that they do about people who live like this.
Yes. What do you think about, you mentioned the Whitney line about maybe second acts, and he's like, maybe not in American life. The characters on the show have sort of achieved a almost total self-awareness at this point, in the sense of how they articulate their interiority, even their journeys, now some of it may be theater and some of it may be projection and some of it may be like, the side of me that I want people to see. And I think that the Harper character specifically does a lot of like, clumps in heavy boots to like let everybody know like I'm a badass, I'm that motherfucker, and then is like has like vulnerabilities and has her own pain and stuff like that. But it is interesting watching, Henry in the hunt scene with his uncle, and then Henry and Whitney's conversation, Yasmin and Henry's huge fight in their bedroom. But it's a specific kind of writing where it's like, I'm not waiting 2 seasons or 3 episodes or 6 episodes for someone to arrive at this revelation about themselves and be able to articulate it. But it is also like a different kind of writing. Like there is would you describe it as stagey?
It's a great question. I was going to say that where they pitch it is from a line in that scene. It's the nexus of arousal and disgust is what interests them most. Yeah. The stagey thing is interesting to consider just because of the fact that these
used
guys...
as like a...
Yeah, well, these guys are staging it too. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
It is, there was it was a hallmark of Succession that characters would tear at each other with knives in just a pass the sausages scene. A lot of sausages on the breakfast table, by the way. And I did see they posted some BTS of like adding more sausages to the plate, so at least they were having fun with it.
I loved the fact that there was just like way more food than any of those people were going to eat, but no one touched so much excess. Yeah.
The reason I bring up Succession is because the tenor of the way that they talked was really beautifully and intentionally paired with the way Mark Mylod moved the camera. It was all handheld, sort of circling, and it was almost like watching a nature video of someone like in the Serengeti watching these great animals attack each other. This is somewhere perched in between, and I think they're getting their own confidence as to how they want the camera to move, and sometimes you notice it more. And so then when the camera is like in the Great Hall, perched way back, and they're not in the center of the frame, I am made aware of the framing in a different way, which maybe feels like they're on display.
Sure.
But all of it works for me because the language of the show has always been from the very beginning that on the trading floor, you can say anything because it's ultimately binary. You're either making the trade or you're not, and anything between you and the trade needs to be removed expeditiously, if not savagely. I think that the language, particularly in this episode, felt sharp to me. And I think that what I mean is like in a big scene where characters are really saying what they feel about each other or what they see in each other, there can be a tendency to just keep writing it until it starts to become flabby, and everything is so pointed that it didn't take me out of it. I think that there are some observations, and we can get into some of the specifics if you want, but like the two scenes the scene with Yasmin and her aunt, where they talk about how these men love murdering women no matter what, was a remarkable scene of dialogue.
Sure.
And I'm very curious when we talk to Mickey and Conrad at the end of the season, the genesis of that, because, famously they don't really have a writer's room, and their buddy, another great writer, Joe Charlton, helps with it. And I'm sure they do have other consultants involved from time to time, but like that felt in a good way, like other characters bringing a point of view, or other people bringing a point of view to the show.
Well, I love that whole storyline of this episode because it's Yasmin realizing that she doesn't have a family anymore at all. It's like this, she leaps up at the arrival of her aunt.
Yeah.
Because she's surrounded by all these people dressed up as viscounts and whatever. And she finally sees another Hanani, across the room and goes running over to her. And it starts with this kind of like immediate kind of connection and this immediate...
You understand me. I'm listening to your advice.
And then it starts to get darker and darker. And then she spots her with Otto. And then, and then when she gets to the end of the night, she finds out like, I'm actually alone in this world. And so that also informs, I think, not only what she does with Haley, but also like what happens, why she's hanging on to this Henry thing so hard. And she's giving him one last chance. But that, like, when you are like kind of all lost at sea without anybody else sharing your name, you're going to behave differently than if you're like, I come from a huge family. And then that's why Henry behaves the way he behaves,
I also think that one of the best aspects of the way Mickey and Conrad make television is they do, I don't know if it's generational or if it's experiential or just being aware of what they like in entertainment and putting it onto the screen. But Henry's journey towards, and there's a direct quote, we would rather die afraid than be present for a single second of our lives. Basically, that is beautifully compelling, devastating, hard-earned therapy speak.
Yes.
That I'm not even going to say lesser shows. Other shows, that's a season. That's a series.
Sure.
They dispatch it in a incredibly dramatic, sometimes melodramatic, long night of the soul. That's a choice, and I think one that is, again, the degree of difficulty is extreme. But at the end of it, I also wanted to take my sports car out on the road. Like they didn't crash the car, even though they came close to it. What did you feel, at what point did you realize we were in kind of a Fight Club ghost situation?
At the bar.
Yeah.
I mean, because initially it was like, obviously nobody seems to acknowledge that the commander is there in the dinner scene. So there was something a bit off about that first moment he's introduced.
Although when you're watching it, you're like, well, again, from the colonies, I'm like, the level of grin and bear it through performed humiliation has been that's been established.
Yes.
That like they will just keep gritting their teeth and drinking through almost anything.
Yes. But I was like, oh, this is interesting. Maybe this is a schoolmate, who's come back, or maybe this is his fucking wild friend who always like brings him into the mess.
Yeah.
But by the time they get to the pub and sit down, and I actually at first had that thought about the priest, which I'm not entirely sure if he was there either. You know what I mean?
Well, I think the other thing that I thought was subtle and interesting was that the maid, Molly, is intentionally cast and dressed as working class Yasmin.
Yes.
I mean, she is a double for her.
Yes.
And I think that was very intentional as well.
When the bar happens and when the fight happens, I was like, this guy's not there.
I did have a moment of too much TV drift because we had just watched another show that we're about to talk about in which a character punches someone perhaps 12 to 15 too many times. With slightly different outcome.
Yeah, the Midland police may not have
They would not have looked kindly on this. They wouldn't have let it go. But again, it's a different system. You mentioned the Harper thing. I liked the use of Harper in this episode a lot because I like giving Myha'la a chance to play different notes. Mm-hmm. And she seemed, because the weight of the world and the weight of the episode is not on her shoulders, she was very smiley and seeming like legitimately flirty and able to like be more of a human than, I don't mean, this is not a criticism of the performance. I mean that the character was able to let her guard down slightly.
Yes.
In a way that was charming and appealing. And
well, that scene between her and Yasmin. So like, it's great. It's like being in a very mini Harold Pinter play where it's like, all of a sudden it's just like, why have you invited me? Why are you here? Yeah. Because I have to be. Why are you here? I'm lonely. Why are you lonely?
I'm 2 episodes in, I'm not fully convinced about Max Minghella. I think I guess I'm curious what role Whitney plays going forward.
We just have to. I think you have we'll get to the end of the season and be like,
yeah, possibly. There's a version of it where he is just fully the devil, mm-hmm. And I think that the performance and the lighting is leaning into that in the early going. In which case, I guess I'm just curious where it's going.
I think I feel that way about the season itself, but I'm not worried. I'm just like, what's this about? You know?
I think my comparison point, and again, this feels like a completely different television show as I'm about to bring it up, but I was going to bring up J. Duplass. The last significant time that an American character came in. And, I have no idea how they wrote the character. I have no idea what their casting process was like who they were picturing when they wrote the character versus what they ended up with. But he brought something that was specifically, it's not off-putting, it was off-kilter. So that I wasn't sure how to feel about him, because you're used to seeing a Duplass brother as like just a puffy chair in human form, but he was obviously a little bit more than that. And I liked that uncertainty. I would like more uncertainty from this character in the early going, especially if Harper's flash and smiles like that. But that's just a purely surface level note.
We've alluded to Landman a couple of times. Our great dig, our great drilling is over.
No, apparently we have seasons more of reserves.
Well, yes. I mean, there's definitely going to be a third season. It sounds like there could be at least 5 or 6. I don't know how that works against Taylor Sheridan's Universal Peacock responsibilities. We'll see. I thought this show ended. Look, I mean, like, you and I have a lot of fun at this show's expense, but just to be sober about it for a second, I thought this show ended its second season in a really interesting place, and that place should have happened in like the second or third episode of this season.
Of this first season, perhaps, as well.
No, I mean, I think that I think that there was a different version of this show on the first season that was way more about like all the disasters that a guy like Tommy has to handle. And my relationship to the show was a little bit more kind of like fun-loving and forgiving, when I was like, it's kind of cool to see like all the different things that go wrong in the oil business and in this world, and how this guy has to handle it. And then the second season is largely Tommy in a pickup truck driving back and forth across Texas, fielding calls,
putting out fires.
But like the first 2 episodes are kind of like that. And then there's like a middle block of 6 episodes that are essentially like the Norrises.
Yeah. There is a Ministry of Propaganda, Caroline Levitt version of the show in which someone, and honestly, they should be leaking this. Someone should leak this. Oh my God, the fact that we ended up in a creatively fulfilling and exciting place, considering all the challenges we had to go through making this show.
Yes.
Please someone leak that story. And even if it's pure Taylor whitewashed propaganda, like, I would love to hear that version. I don't think we're going to get that. No, because they don't care.
And he doesn't talk.
No. He talks through his characters, and turns out sometimes you just need to give the ferret a bath. It is tough to give the show points
credit,
for ending in a place, as you said, that if that was the goal, there is a more economical and entertaining way to get there. We could ask 100 questions, and I have them here in bullet point form about what any of it was for, if this is where we were going. I think the only plausible interpretation of the show is that the showrunner who writes every episode is essentially a wind dancer in front of a Fort Worth auto dealership, getting distracted by shiny things, blowing in different directions, because you can't tell me that this was what the season was all about. The end of season, let's just talk through this chronologically and logically. The end of season 1, Tommy is tied up, beaten, a nail gun shot into his leg, all at the behest of cartel boss Andy Garcia.
Well, really, he's more of like their money manager.
Yeah, but then he's just like, I'm going to have them remove the nail from your leg now, but I own you and you have been warned.
Yes.
Don't do this shit again. Second season reintroduces Andy Garcia as the man who controls all of Tommy's son's drilling. And that leads to a 6-episode run of Tommy walking into Andy Garcia's office saying, fuck you. And he goes, I don't know, Tommy, fuck me, maybe fuck you. And then they run it back while their wives become friends because shopping.
Yes.
Okay. Concurrent to this was the idea that Demi Moore was in the cast of this show for an entire season last year.
Where she's swimming laps.
Where she just swims laps and sometimes strokes John Hamm's cheek.
Gives him a smoothie and a heart pill. Yeah.
Because when they do the Taylor special and it's like, I thought this guy was on another show. Oh. Yeah. She would step up. In the early going, we see her learn to fight on the savannah by talking shit about younger women in bathrooms.
Yes.
Then just as she's stepping into her power, we learn that primarily what she wants to do is have unhinged, Emmy-baiting, crying freakouts where she pours out whiskey at gravestones. That's what she does for about 2 or 3 episodes. Suddenly, at the end of the season, she becomes the gambler of all gamblers.
Yes.
Commits $400 million to a shot in the dark in the ocean. A shot in the dark that we kind of root for because I thought we were supposed to root for the risk takers on this show. And also that geologist is super hot with great body products and Rebecca's in love with him and wants this path to be followed. Tommy talks Andy Garcia into backing it. Then says that's a bad idea to back
Cammy
it.
really talks.
Okay.
Yeah. Tommy never is really for this.
And then Cammy fires him. And suddenly everyone, I mean, this might be something that is actually relevant in America. Everyone here was always against this. Right?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things. I think what you're reacting to is the same thing. I largely agree with you about this. We're reacting to, if this was an album, it was poorly mixed.
That is so generous.
My point is this.
Yeah.
There's a more straightforward way of telling this story that hits certain beats at certain points and turns the kick drum up enough so that you're like, yes, this is the tempo or the rhythm. I need to be aware of this. But because they emphasize Ainsley and Cooper and Angela doing stuff in and around Texas, as much as the oil drilling aspect of it and the MTech aspect of it, the MTech stuff seems to kind of like be lost somewhere underneath a bunch of noise. And then at the end, they're like, no. Cammy has always been a gambler. She's trying to prove that that Monty lives forever through this company.
Yes.
But Nate has always known that this company was built to be sold because he's been hiding all these boxes in the basement of this building.
Always.
And he's like, he never meant for this to go on. He meant for it to be sold. You should sell it.
Why does Nate live in the house hundreds of miles away from where the boxes are?
I don't know. I think he's supposed to be like overseeing the contracts needed for the drilling area. Yeah.
Sure. I like that is so elegant, the seine washing you just did.
No, it's not seine washing.
The analogy to like what happened with the Replacements albums, I love it.
Yeah.
Except the original Replacements albums didn't have an incredibly old saxophone trying to fuck an underage keyboard.
Yeah.
Like that's not what the problem with those records were that needed to be cleaned up in the edit.
Yeah, I forgot about TL and Cheyenne.
My take on the season is that Demi Moore had an A.J. Brown type campaign. Where I believe that she may have been agitating to be traded early on in the making of the season.
Yes. Because
I would say the amount of targets she was given did not really add up.
You say that? Can we make a gentleman's bet right now? Let's get, I would say let's put a mid-level dinner on this. So
does that exist in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I was just trying to say, I guess that's like Sweet Green.
The Arby's on Sunset that's now closed.
I think she's back in season 3.
Well, look, we are existing in a universe where, as part of his attempt to get an Oscar nomination, Will Arnett is showing up on The Madison next season, its first season.
Yeah.
So, showing up on a Taylor Sheridan show does not seem to be the same
because you're saying that, and it's like, she got nominated for an Oscar for The Substance. She's back. She can do movies and whatever. But I think she's coming back in the 3rd season.
I'm not going to bring logic to a Sheridan fight.
Mm-hmm.
That just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
You're in my world now.
And up is fucking down, dog. I was, and sometimes you can be surprised. I didn't know that the priority of a Texas police department would be to prosecute the man defending his fiance from a attempted rape that is on camera. That seems to be, first of all, great to see Mackenzie Essen getting work after his appearance on The Pit last season. And I felt like even as he was saying some of the most horseshit lines I've ever heard in my life in a completely implausible characterization when he was allowed to speak, when he wasn't being monologued at twice. Because this is the classic thing about the generosity of Taylor Sheridan. Rebecca got to walk in and it's like LeBron walking into a gym with 15 3-foot high baskets.
One day I want to see Rebecca in court.
I mean, it would be a remarkable performance. And they'd be like, ma'am, this is an Arby's drive-thru.
Chris and Andy, you're
dining here. Can you lower it?
Demi Moore was on season 3, so Andy had to take Chris.
He had to do it. And then Tommy gets to come in and do the same scene where I guess he's the chief of police, 5 times has to say, "We're just trying to consider the facts here, Tommy."
Yeah.
It's all such aggravated, performative nonsense that it's almost insulting that it's all in the service of the C story in a season finale that's never going to come up again.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's how shows go for 7 years now, though. This is the thing, is that like you have to, you just don't know what it was like deep into Yellowstone where you were like, what am I watching?
I also...
Where there would be like 15-minute scenes of dudes that you've never seen before, like eating at the bunkhouse.
The show's commitment to starting all scenes with an extreme close-up of a woman in her underwear is remarkable. Like, as you know,
that's true.
As kids who grew up in the generation of like hoping Hot Dog the movie was on Cinemax, like, who among us? I respect it. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was...
Yeah, if you had told young Andy, you never would have believed you.
That's a worldview that I'm not immune to.
Yeah.
That said, like, the fact that this episode has the framing of Cheyenne's completely, just underweared posterior, like fixing the car, and that's how that's the framing of it. And then they do the same framing to introduce Ariana as her bruises are being investigated at the police station.
Yes.
Like I respect the commitment to the bit, even though I may disagree with the...
I think I appreciate you standing up for Ariana and Cheyenne, but like everybody's here because they want to hear you talk about Pagan again.
Wait, I want to come back to Pagan. I did want to say that I spent this whole season seeing the credit for Stephen Kay being like, oh, like, I feel like that's interesting. Did he...
He must be like John Ford.
No, I thought he was like, there's something about that name that made me think that like he directed the sequel to Elizabeth that Shekhar Kapoor didn't get around to doing. Like, he was just some like, oh, he's a British guy who's done a bunch of stuff, yeoman-like work, like this generation's Taylor Hackford, who's just like, and then you Google him, and I learned that
he looks like a pirate.
Well, or he looks like he looks like late period Motley Crue.
Yeah,
and he's married to Piper Perabo, and I guess he's directed tons of Yellowstone and was an actor.
And Piper Perabo was on Yellowstone, so it really is all in the family. Yeah, which I appreciate. I wouldn't want. Spent a lot of time in England recently. I wouldn't want someone fresh off the boat, like the reverse me, walking onto the set of this show. You want to talk about Pagan? Let's talk about Pagan.
The Pagan redemption arc? Well, you have a little bit of a look at this face. You feel like maybe I jumped the gun.
Let's hear it. What did you think, bud?
Well,
I didn't think that was where it was going to get left.
Them as good friends understanding each other?
No, those two as being like incredible adversaries and just like taking down gender non-binary people a peg.
You think that you were saying this is an argument for getting to know each other a little bit more, working together,
reaching across the aisle,
taping each other up.
You and me, we're not so different.
Ahead of time. I was curious about Ainsley, who has spent a season and a half in just full-on preparation for the rigors of cheerleading.
Because, these 2 seasons only take place over like 6 weeks. Did you know that?
No, I felt like it's been years. Like, it's certainly been years for me. This has been 6 weeks?
In terms of the time that has elapsed in between, because she's like, my husband died 2 weeks ago. I'm not going to lose this company.
That's wild, dude. Ainsley did seem really surprised by the rigors of a professional sporting program. So it was good that Pagan was there to tape up her ankles ahead of time.
Yeah. If Ainsley had been working on her ankles instead of her tan all summer, maybe she would have been a little bit more ready for cheerleading
if she
practice.
hadn't been so distraught by the aromas of ferret that she broke her lifelong margarita fast.
It's like that sugar is corroding her
a minute on the lips, a lifetime on the ankles is what they say. I thought it was nice that they could be friends. I thought it was nice that Pagan likes music. Who do they like? Lainey Wilson? Mm-hmm. I think that the correct takeaway here...
I wonder if Ainsley and Pagan let that Zach Bryan rip after everything.
You like this new record, huh?
Yeah.
I'll check it out. It's just... It's just layered. It's like a peasant bed.
I don't think you're gonna like
it. Tournament at Game of Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Yeah. It's just layers of straw after another to support the initial arguments. So the Pagan Ainsley collision, where Pagan is basically like ChatGPT, tell me what Megyn Kelly said last week and let me just embody it. That was the entire character.
Yeah.
This week, he's like, nuance. Let me have 3 dipshits from high school being like, hey, take them out or whatever. And then she's like, you guys have little dicks. And they're like, no, we don't. We watch Hot Dog together all the time. Like, okay. Yeah. I guess it balances out and more, I'm the fool. Big broad strokes, like the most frustrating thing about the show isn't the borderline incompetent writing and the insulting gender politics.
Yeah.
It's the fact that every so often it drives near a good television show.
Sure.
And you can feel the contours of it. And thus doing the Sterling Cooper Draper Price thing that industry also did is the right move to get all of the characters that we have built empathy equity with over the course of now 2 seasons into the same place, into the same business, not driving in opposite directions from each other all the time, makes sense. Now, Rebecca, who has proven herself to be relatively risk-averse up to this point, her willingness to just throw her entire professional career in with this group of dipshits is wild.
Do you think that Nate made a bit of a professional mistake there?
Yeah, what is...
Cammie offers him interim president.
Yes.
Tommy makes him treasurer.
100%. He fumbled the bag. He lives in someone's guest room.
And does everybody get the same equity stake regardless of their...
Just boss and his workers.
Yeah.
I don't think management shares in the spoils, you know?
Oh, you don't think so?
No, I don't. Now, we don't know what kind of pay package treasurer comes with, but I think of a man of Nate's age and stature, I feel like president and then like a golden parachute makes a lot more sense.
Sure.
He could maybe have his own apartment one day.
Or move to Dallas.
Or fucking move to where he actually works.
Yeah.
I also feel frustrated that while...
Because Rebecca doesn't know anything about oil drilling, really. I mean, maybe she doesn't need to, but like she has to have her boyfriend explain how looking for natural gas in the Gulf works and stuff like that. But she is made COO of
gas
CTT
drilling.
Oil and Cattle.
I also want to say that the defining feature of Tommy's life coming out of season 1 is...
But I guess Tommy took a demotion as well.
He did, but that was for family.
Yeah.
That was because he wanted to put an 82-year-old who cannot navigate a wooden chair successfully in charge of drilling. Like, look, I am all for, and soon hopefully will be the beneficiary of, a push to include elders in the workplace. Like, we are grateful that anyone's listening at all at this point. But I do think that maybe the general direction of the country has suggested that it's time to turn the page on baby boomers.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. Yeah.
So when we get to this time this year,
yeah,
I guess, because I think they're on the same track of they're going to start shooting in the spring and have it up in the late fall.
Right.
Do you think you'll have a return engagement with Landman season 3?
You have to explain to me like what, you know, there's like soft asks and then there's harder asks in terms of my continued participation in this podcast. And I'm well aware of it, and I like to navigate the politics as well as anyone.
Yeah.
You know, so you tell me.
Okay.
You tell me.
I'll wait for that. I'll wait for that season 3 trailer drop and the casting announcements and stuff.
A year ago, though, the defining trade hallmark of Tommy's life was, I will not be in business with the Mexican cartels.
And now he's like, well, I mean, he's finally getting back on the casino floor. You know, he's finally taken a spin at the big roulette wheel. At
the young age of 70. One thing that I do respect, and we can move on from this, but I did want to get your opinion on this. Mm-hmm. One thing that I do like about the show, and maybe this is just a hallmark of television in general, you know, in which I'm sure people have noticed, like, no one ever says goodbye on a telephone call in TV and movies because that's just extra dialogue and it's a waste, so that we move on. When Tommy has his power lunch to make his pitch to Bob, as soon as Bob makes it clear that like he would hire him, he just stands up and leaves. Yeah. Have you ever done that? Will you do that at Arby's?
I've never done that.
Because
I want to. I want to try.
All lunch meetings, you know, you have to make small talk for a while.
You know what I do sometimes is I think I have a shorter clock than most people. Is that like we get to the end of a dinner and some people like to linger. Mm-hmm. I'm not a big lingerer at a restaurant table.
I want to say, as someone who's dined with you, your physical performance at the end of meals makes that clear. You when it's time
it's okay if I say it. I don't like it when you say it.
I'm just saying, when it's time for you to go, you go.
Okay.
You know, there starts to be some movement. There's a little bit of watch looking.
Interesting. What else do you want to tell me about myself?
Know that about you? It's the same thing that you do when I bring up how I recently completed Effingers, an 800-page book published by New York Review of Books.
Thanks to Kaya.
You don't want to do our sports minute?
Not really. We've been here for a really long time. Thanks to Kai.
All right.
We will be back on Thursday with The Pit. Maybe some movie talk.
I mean, sentimental value. That's the movie of the year.
The sentimental values eclipsed Marty Supreme?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, easily.
Great.
You know how I am a sucker for a multi-generational family story set in Europe.
Let's wrap there.